Right now, in this moment. You are struggling to read this sentence without your mind drifting somewhere else. Maybe you caught yourself. Maybe you didn't. But something inside you just pulled. A notification. A thought. A vague urge to check something, anything, for no reason at all. And if you're like most people, you've started to believe that something is wrong with you. That you're lazy. Undisciplined. Broken. In some way that everyone else seems to have figured out. But here's what nobody is telling you. Your focus didn't disappear because you're weak. It was taken. Deliberately. Systematically. By an industry that spent billions of dollars figuring out exactly how to do it. And the worst part? The science behind how they did it goes back much further than your phone. Let's start with what focus actually is. Because most people have it completely wrong. Focus is not a skill. It is not a personality trait. It is not something the disciplined have and the lazy don't. Focus is a biological state. A specific neurological condition your brain enters when it decides the current moment is worth protecting from interruption. Your brain has a system for this. It's called the default mode network. And for most of human history, it worked perfectly. Here's how it was supposed to work. For 300,000 years, your ancestors lived in an environment where information was scarce. A sound in the bushes. A change in the wind. The behavior of an animal across the field. These were signals. Rare, meaningful, potentially life-saving signals. And your brain evolved to respond to novelty. To new information, with a shot of dopamine. A small chemical reward for paying attention to something new. Because in that environment, new things mattered. New things could kill you or feed you. Novelty meant survival. That system is still running inside your head right now. Unchanged. Unupdated. Still scanning for signals in a world that has buried it alive in noise. In 2004, researcher Gloria Mark at the University of California, Irvine began studying how office workers actually spent their time. What she found was disturbing. The average worker was interrupted or self-interrupted every 3 minutes and 5 seconds. And after each interruption, it took an average of 23 minutes to fully return to the original task. 23 minutes. For a 3-minute distraction. But here's the part that got worse over time. When Mark repeated her research in 2012, the average time before interruption had dropped to 1 minute and 15 seconds. By 2020, it was down to 47 seconds. We are interrupting ourselves almost every minute. And we don't even know we're doing it. Your brain isn't malfunctioning. It's doing exactly what it was built to do. It's just doing it in an environment it was never designed for. Now here's where it gets complicated. Because the environment didn't just change by accident. In 2017, former Google design ethicist Tristan Harris testified before the United States Senate. He told them something that every person on the planet needed to hear. A handful of engineers in Silicon Valley, most of them in their 20s and 30s, had redesigned the attention of 2 billion people without anyone's consent. Not with force. Not with law. With psychology. The tools they used weren't secret. They came directly from behavioral science research that had been sitting in academic journals for decades, waiting for someone to weaponize it. It started with B.F. Skinner. In the 1930s, Skinner ran experiments on pigeons. He put them in boxes with levers. When a pigeon pressed a lever, it received a food pellet. Predictable reward. The pigeon pressed the lever regularly, got its food, moved on. Normal behavior. Then Skinner changed one thing. He made the reward unpredictable. Sometimes the lever gave food. Sometimes it didn't. Sometimes it gave a lot. Sometimes nothing. And the pigeons went insane. They stopped doing anything else. They pressed the lever compulsively. Obsessively, hundreds of times more than before. Not because they were hungrier. Because the uncertainty itself became the addiction. Skinner called it a variable reward schedule. Casinos figured it out long before Silicon Valley did. Slot machines are the most profitable machines in any casino, not because they pay out the most, but because the unpredictability of the payout makes it neurologically impossible to stop. Your brain keeps pulling the lever looking for the reward it knows is coming but can't predict when. Your phone is a slot machine. Every time you open it, you might find something fascinating. You might find nothing. You might find something that makes you feel connected, validated, seen. Or you might find an empty feed. The uncertainty is the mechanism. The scroll is the lever. And the engineers who built it knew exactly what they were doing. Former president of Facebook, Sean Parker, admitted in 2017 that the platform was built from the ground up to consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible. He used the phrase, "How do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible?" And then he said they knew it was doing something harmful and they did it anyway. Because the metrics were going up. But here's what the tech industry doesn't want you to think about. Because if you understand this next part, the whole machine falls apart. Attention is not infinite. It is a finite biological resource, and it depletes like a muscle. In the 1990s, psychologist Roy Baumeister at Case Western Reserve University ran a series of experiments on what he called ego depletion. He sat people down in a room with two things on a table: freshly baked chocolate chip cookies and a bowl of radishes. One group was told they could eat the cookies. The other group was told to eat only the radishes, and to resist the cookies. Then both groups were given a difficult, unsolvable puzzle to work on. The group that had resisted the cookies gave up on the puzzle significantly faster. Not because they were less intelligent. Because the act of resisting had used up a measurable portion of their mental resources. Self-control, focus, and decision-making all draw from the same pool. And every notification, every interruption, every tiny moment of redirection drains it. By the time most people sit down to do something that actually matters, that pool is already half empty. And we've built an entire civilization that drains it before breakfast. The average person checks their phone 96 times per day. That's once every 10 minutes across a waking day. Each check is a small withdrawal. A microdecision. A tiny act of redirection that costs more than it looks like it costs. And over the course of a day, those withdrawals add up to something enormous. They add up to a life where deep work, real creative thought, actual presence in your own experience, becomes almost impossible. Researchers at the University of Texas at Austin found in 2017 that simply having your phone on your desk, face down, silent, with notifications off, reduced available cognitive capacity. Not because you were using it. Just because part of your brain was quietly managing the possibility of using it. The device doesn't have to be active to drain you. It just has to exist nearby. Now here's the part that should make you angry. This is not an accident of technology. It is a design choice. The red notification badge on your apps is red for a reason. Red is the color the human nervous system responds to most urgently. It signals danger. It triggers alertness. It pulls your eye involuntarily. Nobody chose red because it looked nice. They chose it because it works. Because it creates a low-grade anxiety that can only be resolved by opening the app. The infinite scroll was invented by Asa Raskin, a designer who later publicly apologized for creating it. He estimated that infinite scroll alone costs humanity about 200,000 hours of human attention every single day. He said, "It's as if they took behavioral cocaine and sprinkled it over the interface." And he built it. He said he built it in about a weekend. Without really thinking about the consequences. Because the goal at the time was just engagement. Always engagement. More time on the platform. More clicks. More scrolls. More data. More revenue. The consequences of living inside these systems are not subtle anymore. A 2019 study published in JAMA Pediatrics followed over 2,400 children for 2 years and found that every additional hour of screen time at age 1 was associated with measurable differences in executive function and attention at age 5. Not at adolescence. At age 5. The window when your brain is laying down the circuits for focus is the same window when most children are handed screens to keep them quiet. Adults aren't immune. A study from King's College London found that heavy social media users show measurable reductions in gray matter density in the prefrontal cortex, the exact region responsible for sustained attention, impulse control, and long-term planning. The same region that distinguishes human cognition from every other species on the planet. We are physically reshaping our brains in real time. And we are doing it voluntarily. But here is what evolutionary biology wants you to understand. And this is the part that changes everything. You are not weak. You are not broken. You are a 300,000-year-old organism being run through a system that was engineered specifically to overwhelm you. Your dopamine response, your sensitivity to novelty, your inability to ignore an unresolved notification. These are not character flaws. They are ancient survival features being exploited by people who understand them better than you do. The hunter-gatherer who ignored unusual sounds in the forest died. The one whose brain lit up with urgency at every new signal survived. You are descended from that person. You carry their nervous system. And that nervous system is now being used against you 16 hours a day. In 2021, researchers at Harvard published findings showing that the human mind wanders almost 50% of the time, 47% of waking hours. And here's what's fascinating. Mind wandering is not failure. It is a feature. It is during mind wandering that the brain consolidates memory, generates creative connections, processes emotion, and builds the internal narrative that makes you a coherent person. The default mode network, the same system that gets hijacked by distraction, is also the system responsible for empathy, imagination, and self-understanding. When you are constantly distracted, you don't just lose focus. You lose the internal life that makes you you. Ancient philosophers understood something about attention that we buried under a century of industrial productivity culture. The Stoics called it prosoche, present attention. The deliberate act of bringing your mind fully into the current moment. Not as a spiritual exercise, but as the fundamental act of being a human being. Marcus Aurelius wrote about it constantly. Not because it was easy for him. Because it was hard. Because even in 170 AD, without smartphones, without social media, without any of it, the human mind was already restless, already drifting, already searching for the next thing. What we've done in the last 15 years is take that natural restlessness and pour gasoline on it. So what do? The honest answer is that individual willpower alone cannot win against a system designed by thousands of engineers optimizing for your failure. Trying to outdiscipline an algorithm is like trying to outswim a current. You can make progress, but the current never stops. But there is something the algorithm cannot take from you. And that is the knowledge of what it is doing. Because once you understand the mechanism, you stop blaming yourself. You stop interpreting your inability to focus as a personal failure and start seeing it as a rational response to an irrational environment. And that shift, from shame to clarity, is where everything starts to change. Your focus isn't gone. It was never gone. It's been redirected. Systematically, deliberately. By people who profited from the redirection. And every moment you spend understanding that is a moment they didn't get. The switch didn't disappear. It was hidden. And now you know where to look.